When I talk about Neil Druckman, when I talk about The Last of Us Part 2, my gosh, I have to say, I do like the comments I get. I feel like this is the first time we've actually had Neil Druckman in a proper interview, a 50-minute interview with the writer 28 days later. It's a very interesting podcast if you're interested. Both talk about how, what they did when they were younger, directing and comic. They spoke about The Last of Us Part 2, The Last of Us, in terms of the series. I just really feel with this interview, and it is more from Alex Garland. Neil Druckman agrees. He acknowledges that there was backlash with The Last of Us Part 2, how people said to him that he was accused of false advertising, which I believe he was. I contacted Amazon and got a full refund after playing 50 hours of the game. But he speaks about that. And I felt like this was the opportunity to say to fans of who didn't like it, fans who did like it, and acknowledge them. I just didn't like the way when he said that. Alex was basically like, who gives a shit?
A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly.
Whether you agree with me or not, this was the opportunity to open discussion about people who liked the game, about people who didn't like the game. Developers are there to make a game for gamers to buy. Like, you should appreciate your audience. Appreciate your damn audience. That's what was so frustrating. It was more like, wow.
At least, again, I come from a very specific genre of games, and they're action games, character action games. And there's this tension in a game where if you have, like, let's say, two characters sitting and talking, the player wants to get back to the action. So you can only do that for so long.
So this is interesting because he talks about how basically in video games, we want to get straight back to the action.
And that's why in The Last of Us, for example, the Bill sequence works very well in the game because you're fighting the infected with Bill, getting to know him through that action. And I think if we had adapted that exactly as is for the show, it would have been maybe a thrilling episode, but dramatically would have been a lot less interesting than where we've ended up, which...
Personally, with that Bill episode, now, it was a love story. By the end of that episode, I was moved. I'm not going to lie. I was like, wow, Bill and his partner die together. I thought at the end of it, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. But I just feel like, imagine that sort of sequence, what we went through in the game. I feel like it would have just been just as better, if not better than what we got. We would have understood there could have been flashbacks to his partner that he loved. I just wish we saw badass Bill. I really wish. So him saying that, I don't think it would have worked. I think it would have worked. Even though this series was less action than the game. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of us thought that the series would be as much action and choreography, and it's more like a drama.
I've been working on this project at Naughty Dog for 4 years now. We just announced it. It's called Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. It's our venture into more sci-fi stuff.
What kind of sci-fi? Like, I mean, obviously I know you, but is it like, you're talking deep space? Is it Earthbound?
It's not Earthbound. It takes place 2,000 years in an alternate future that deviates in the late 80s.
Wow.
And we spent like years just coming up with that timeline. And it does sound interesting. And it's dealing with, it's funny, it's like I joke about this with the team. It's like, oh, we made a game with The Last of Us 2. We made certain creative decisions. That got us a lot of hate. A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly.
That is the bit that pissed me off. Let's say 50% hated the game, 50% liked the game. This is your audience you're talking to. The people that buy your games or not. How can you not care about their opinions? I just didn't understand where this conversation could have developed. Okay, so a lot of people didn't like the game. Do you think that is because of people who love the original? Do you think they have a right to not like it because if they played The Last of Us Part 1 or The Last of Us from PS3, PS4? Can you understand that? But no, everyone's entitled to an opinion. This conversation could have gone somewhere good where Neil could have addressed the people that didn't like the game. And whoever did like the game, that's cool. But let's not hide the fact that a lot of people didn't like the game. Imagine someone like Hideo Kojima. Have we ever heard him say, anyone who doesn't like Death Stranding 1, I don't give a shit, I don't care about you. Mate, he would never say that.
With The Last of Us 2, we made certain creative decisions. That got us a lot of hate. A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly. But so the joke is like, you know what, let's do something that people won't care as much about. Let's make a game about faith and religion. Not only in this alternate history timeline, we've made this where the timeline deviates, this new religion becomes pretty prominent. And then we spend years just building out this religion of like from the original prophet all the way how it gets like changed and sometimes bastardized and evolves over all these years. And then like all these people from this
how many, you said 2,000 years?
2,000.
Coincidentally 2,000 years.
Coincidentally 2,000. And this whole religion takes place on this one planet, and then at one
so it takes place all on this one planet as well.
point, all communication stops from this planet.
Nice.
And you're playing a bounty hunter that's chasing her bounty, and she crash lands on this planet. And it's, and I really wanted to make a game about faith and religion, but also about
this. It sounds
just being
awesome.
lonely. So many of the previous games we've done, there's always like an ally with you, and you're talking. I was like, I really want you to be lost in a place that you're really confused about what happened here. Who are the people here? What was their history? And in order to get off this planet, like, again, no one has been heard from this planet for 600 years. So if you ever
This does sound
hope to
interesting.
have a chance to get off, you have to figure out what happened here.
He doesn't talk about the gameplay, he doesn't talk about giving gamers, you know, it's going to be amazing gameplay. Maybe because he's talking about it to a director who's not involved in games. Maybe that's why he's talking about it.
There are so many questions I could ask you, but I'm not going to because
This
it
is about
would
Intergalactic.
put you on the spot, I think. And also,
I'll cut it if I say the wrong thing. It's fine.
well, but also, I do think that, as like, I'm sure you've gathered by now, like a serious fan, I would like to encounter that story knowing as little as possible. And I don't love
Here we go.
the process of selling things because I feel one is diminishing it.
I've gotten in trouble actually because of trying to protect the story. We've released a trailer for Last of Us 2 where we faked a shot and we showed Joel somewhere where he would never make it.
It's
to
false
because of things that
advertising.
happened in that story.
As a deliberate,
way to throw off
Yeah.
the scent.
Yeah.
And people that didn't like the game accused that of being false advertisement.
okay, again, who gives a shit? So
And this is what I mean, guys. Who gives a shit? You're not doing a even when you make series. So even if you agree with me or not, I hate the way who gives a shit about your fans. Who gives a shit about the people that care about The Last of Us? But movies do it all the time, and yeah, and I personally don't think it's right. Stuff like Infinity War, where they changed the Infinity Stones, Cap grabs Thanos' hand when Hulk is running. I feel like that is different. I'm looking at the wrong camera. I feel like it is different because it ended up being an amazing film. This is a developer. Seems like he's lost his passion to make amazing games for gamers, for an audience. At the end of the day, why do you make a game? You make a game so that you can sell millions of copies and make money and then make more. And like, you're the head of Naughty Dog. If I was Sony and looking at it, and you look at the likes to dislike ratio from the Heretic Prophet, you look at how you are getting backlash, whether people like it or not, there's a lot of dislikes. And you think this is an opportunity to respect your fans. You could have said, listen, I know it was a decisive game. I knew a lot of people didn't like it. It was a bold move we tried to do. Yeah, looking back, you could look at maybe the advertising. Like I wouldn't have got a refund, guys, if it wasn't false advertising. Remember, I spent a lot of money on The Last of Us Part 2. I wasn't making a lot of money back then.
because although, yes, these things have to be sold, and the way they are sold, it seems, is by creating trailers that tell the entire story. I as an
Well, we don't need
individual
that.
have a choice to not access those things, and so I try not to. And it's one of the benefits of not being on social media. Actually, is that I'm immunized from so much conversation.
So it's interesting he says that as well, and I get what he's saying as well. I get what he's saying about I don't want to know. And that's what I did with The Last of Us Part 2, guys. I remember saying to my sister and her ex, who I was living with at the time, he looked online, and I remember I was sitting there, and I remember the day I was sitting there, and he was like, "Guy, have you seen the backlash to Last of Us Part 2? He goes, "I've seen the leaks. Like, I've heard the leaks." I said, "Mate, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything. I'm going in completely blind." And I remember saying to him, listen, I reckon these people just pissed off with the story. And in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe something happens to Joel at the end or something like that. I'm going in completely blind. And when I saw that trailer with Joel, and I was like, this is going to be another epic journey with Joel and Ellie.
Arrive at this game knowing very little, but what you've described sounds fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
And so smart as well.
Oh, yeah, it's so we still have a ways to go, but I'm
Sure.
kind of very excited to see. And it's like, again, these things are so complex and big, and there's so many people involved. It's like I still don't know exactly what this thing is going to look like at the end. It's like I have a theory, I have an idea, but
So
it's still
obviously-
evolving and changing as we're making it.
It's hard to say
Cool.
where this game is
Awesome.
going.
Can't wait.
After the Heretic Prophet, I reckon Neil Druckmann will step down from Naughty Dog.
I've heard you say in some interviews you need to take a break from directing.
Yeah, I have done, yeah.
Some people have misinterpreted that as if you're retiring. I'm curious, asking for a friend, when is it
Sweet.
enough? When is it time to stop the
It's a good
compulsion?
question. It's a good question, and compulsion is the word. It is the word. I think writing is the product of compulsion. For that reason, it's not a free will issue. It's like you either have the compulsion at that moment or you don't. And I do find that even when I am not working I have nothing to work on, I am just jotting down story ideas.
I'll recommend watching this podcast, but I still think now I'm not saying an apology because everyone says you're still sour about the blah 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 blah. It's not that. It's just that it didn't sell as much as the first game. There was a lot of a backlash, and it's just a shame that you couldn't address the fans that didn't like the game. You just shat on them, really.